My name's Clare Trenchard. I am a sculptor and I live in southwest Dorset where I have a studio and I work from there. So my studio is set in a garden which is on the edge of the Marshwood Vale. The Marshwood Vale is the most glorious part of Dorset. We're completely miles from anywhere, which is where I want to be. I open the studio once a year for Dorset Art Weeks every other year, and I have a class of people who I teach drawing and sculpture to, and they have an exhibition here every year as well. I think in 3 dimensions. I've never been great with colour, so for me, being a painter was never really an option. I always drew, but black and white was my thing, and as a child, I just loved making things. I trained initially as a sculptor in Chelsea Art School, back in the day, and have been obsessed with sculpture, drawing, making things ever since. I'm afraid I'm an obsessive. I have to make things. I have to draw things. When I'm away from my studio, I'm thinking about what I'm going to make when I get back to my studio. That's where I'm happiest, but it's also where I'm unhappiest because it's not all free-flowing. It's incredibly torturous sometimes. I mean, there are holes in my floor here where I've thrown pieces down in disgust. They don't work. They won't work. And one gets very, very, very obsessive about making them work. And then you get into that wonderful, wonderful place where things flow and things work out wonderfully. But either way, it is all-consuming. I also have a sculpture garden, so it's very important. The placing of a sculpture, to me, is very important, like at the end of a vista or running through trees or whatever. A sculpture in the wrong place is no good at all. It's like a plant in the wrong place. The garden, to me, is a big part of my life. I am obsessed almost as much with the garden as I am with my work, but it's a great place to show it, and it feels right. It feels right to be there. So for me to walk around a corner and see my 3 running haremen under the apple tree, just coming through the long grass, that's a perfect place for them. So in Lyme Regis Gardens this summer, I'm going to exhibit 2 pieces. One is my acrobatic hare. This idea came originally from acrobats in Covent Garden in London, and a wolf. So they've really picked 2 quite different pieces. The acrobats are playful, the wolves are slightly darker. Well, the idea normally comes from something I've seen. So take the wolves, for instance, which have been quite a passion for quite some time now. I study them, I draw them, I take film of them. I like to see their relationship with each other. I think it's the movement that interests me. I think it's capturing a movement, capturing that lithe quality. So your sketches are of a moment. They're of an essence as well. Once I've got that information, it needs to be embedded. I need to know what a wolf looks like without really having to look at the wolf. I then put all that aside. I have no information near me, and I make maquettes. So I'm using wax because it's incredibly easy to use, and it serves my purpose perfectly. I can squelch it on in great lumps, and whatever I do with it, with my hand, the marks remain in the wax. From the small maquette, I then weld a large armature. Having welded my armature, I then start building it up with scrim and plaster. I find plaster's great if you put on too much. I just saw the whole of an edge off, and then I work into it. I bash it about. It's incredibly physical. Way more plaster goes out as rubbish than I ever remember putting on in the first place. But in there somewhere is the wolf, and you just have to keep plugging away, chopping away until you get it. I'm working towards more abstraction. I'm trying to get away from a realistic surface. I don't want to reproduce skin or fur. I want to take a step back from that. I want a stage in between me and the figure itself. So the collage does that brilliantly with the drawings, because I just have to think shape, line, tone. I really want my sculptures to pull people in and for them to respond to the way they react to the landscape, the way the landscape reacts to them, the way the grass is parted with the wolves coming through. I want them to believe in them. So the reason I make sculpture, I think the reason I'm so obsessive about it, is that each time I make a piece, I'm happy for a moment, and then I look at it and I think, no, I could do so much better. So that thrill of starting the next piece, which is always going to be better, I think that's what keeps me going.